Today I'd like to share with you a little thing that I've been working with the PanPastel Artist Pastels. They come in those lovely round pats or pans, and they are a solid, almost chalk-like, except they don't have the dust that a chalk pastel would have, and they're very smooth and creamy. And I started this little project by sketching a very simple basic face, and I'm using the very lightest skin tone that I have, and using a soft tool, which is the applicator that you can see that I'm using that is provided with the PanPastels. I am applying a layer of the pastel to the portrait, starting with the lightest color and going over the whole thing for a base coat. And then now I'm taking the next darkest color that I'm going to be using, and I'm simply going around and shading using the tool, taking the little point and rubbing it in right on top of that other color. And what happens is these two colors start to blend. The color that's already on the watercolor paper that I used and the new color are going to blend, and you're actually blending right on your paper with no wet medium. It's a very, very nice medium to use in an art journal or other things. I am using it on top of 180-pound hot press watercolor paper for this portrait. Now I'm taking a little darker color and continuing with the shading process, going right over the top, and I'm just going to keep doing this and working the colors in as I go along, and shading and layering and layering. It's like painting, but you know, it is quite a bit different because obviously you're not using a brush, there's no water involved, but it is like layering acrylic paints on top of each other, only you're blending right on top of the work as you go. You can also pick up a couple of different colors at one time and then blend those directly on your work also. When you get into the little tight areas, you want to use the little tip, the little pointed tip. This is kind of my favorite tool. They have several different shapes for doing larger areas. They have larger sponges that you can use. They look like makeup sponges, kind of little wedges. And then they have little tools that look like eye makeup applicators that you can use also. I'm just going to keep adding those darker shades and working the portrait and structuring the face. The actual portrait that I did this morning took 23 minutes to do, and that was with messing with the videotape. So you can see it's a very fast, effective way to create some artwork if you don't have a lot of time, and there is no cleanup, so the mess factor is not there at all, which makes it very nice if you're in a hurry and you want to just, you know, have a little creative time but not get too messy. Now I'm using another more reddish tone color and adding that to the cheeks. And all the colors that I've used in this I've listed so you can see and know what I used with it. This warms up the skin tones when you start adding the more red tones to it. I've never actually done a portrait using just these until I started playing with this last night. I've mostly used them in backgrounds in my art journals or to add a little color where I didn't want any wet medium, maybe a thin journal page or something like that. So I thought it would be fun to try doing a portrait and using only these instead of painting one, and it was a lot of fun. That's why I decided to share it in a video with you. See, I'm just working on defining her lip area, and when you get into the tight areas too, you'll see later I use a little bit different tool to try to get into that little small lip area. And I use my woodless graphite pencil to define her eye shapes and draw in her iris and pupil and the lash line, much as I would do if I was painting with acrylics. Same technique with this. Pencil in her little eyebrows and define her lip area. Little places like the nostril that are too small really to get into with the PanPastels. You'll find when you're working with these, they blend so nicely, and you can actually layer the lighter colors on top of the darker colors and still see them. They're really amazing. They have very high pigmentation in them, and they're really lovely to work with. This is a little blending tool that I don't even know what you would call it. It's like a blending stump on the end, kind of spongy, but in cone shape, and they come in different sizes, and you can get them in the decorative painting aisle in the craft store. And I'm sure they're probably used for some kind of decorative painting techniques, but I use them to blend with, and they're very nice because you can get the different sizes of them. They work really well with these. You could also use makeup sponges or makeup applicators as well. You can just see I'm barely even touching the PanPastel. It really doesn't take much. These things, they're a little expensive to get started, to get sets of them, but they'll last. I don't even know how long it would take to use these up. I've used them a lot, and you can't even tell on the cakes. They look brand new, so it just takes so little to do something. They will last a long time. I always have to use my little bit of Paynes Grey to just shadow those areas. I like that blue-gray tone for the shadows. Little white to highlight with, and you can see when you're really working on this in real life, you can see the white show up really well over the top of the other colors, and I just blend that in. It's kind of nice because a lot of things you would have to use the white, and then you would have to, work lightest to darkest, and you don't have to worry about that with these. Not so much anyway. I mean, you can add the light on top of the dark and still get some of that effect. I'm just working a little blue into her irises. And again, taking my little graphite pencil and going in there and adding the pupils. Just gives you a very, very soft look to your work. Now I'm going to add some hair in, and I've speeded up the tape here so I would have time to get all of this in 10 minutes so I could put it on YouTube. So I just started adding the hair.